Good Tov. Today's daf yomi is Bava Basra daf Bava Basra 97. Today's daf yomi is dedicated for Shmira for the Chayalim, Atzon for the Shvuyim, and the Yeshua for Am Yisrael on this Eis Tzara. We're going to start on Tzadi Zayin Amud Aleph, 6 lines from the top. So we've been discussing the wine that was after the grape skins were crushed to make wine, then you took the skins and you added water to them. So do you still make a bracha on that as Bori Priyagofen, as a blessing on wine, or do you make a shahakol? So let's say these skins that you combine with water and it tastes a little bit like water, but and the Gemara is discussing that it's actually not adding any liquid. It's just basically purple water. Mahu Amar way. So what will be the law? So he said to me, Savras Chamro, this is not wine. Kihuya Ba'amo, this is just basically like colored water. It's just got a little bit of a flavor, but it's not certainly not enough to make it considered like it is wine. It's Kihuya Ba'amo. It's just a coloring, and it's not going to be considered wine, and so therefore since there's no real essence from the fruit, there's no real contribution from the grape. It's just a little bit of the taste is so weak. Therefore, the blessing will be shahakol. Rashi in Eruvin says kihuya is like tikahena shinav, meaning to say, remind us a little bit of hakeya shinav, which we have in the Haggadah, meaning to say the teeth are too weak to cut the food. And in Keah Barzel, when the iron becomes dull in the book of Koheles, meaning to say it's not the actual fruit, but it's just the water, and it has a little bit of the fruit. So that's how the commentaries explain it. Tana Rabbanan, the Gemara continues, Shemarim Shal Truma. So let's say you had the wine, it was Truma. You pressed it, you got out Truma wine, but now you have the skins left. So Rishon Vasheni, so the first 2 times that you add water to it and get a drink, we're going to say that'll be usher, that'll be prohibited for non-Kohanim as though it's Truma. The Rashbam says it's prohibited rabbinically. Ushlishi, but the third time you pour the water into these skins and make a drink from it, that'll be mutter. That's no longer the Truma. Whereas Rabbi Meir says, Av Shlishi ben no same time. Rabbi Meir says also the third time you do it, it'll be prohibited because it gives off a little bit of the taste. So even the third time will be prohibited because it gives a little taste. Mishal Meiser Rishon, but if it's Mishal Meiser, it's Meiser Sheni. But if Meiser Sheni is the fruit that Yisrael has to bring to Jerusalem to eat in Jerusalem. Everyone brings it to Jerusalem to eat there. This Rishon Aser Meiser Sheni is more lenient than Truma. So the first time you mix in the water into the skins, it'll be prohibited. Sheni mutter. The second time will be permitted. Rabbi Meir Omer Av Sheni beno same time. So he says no, even the second time will be prohibited. And comes along Shel Hektish, and if it's wine that was consecrated to the temple, also the shlishi will be aser. The Tanna Kama says that also the third time you mix it in will be prohibited. The revi mutter, the fourth time it will be permitted. Whereas Rabbi Meir says af revi benosin time. Meir says also the fourth time will be prohibited if it gives off a taste. The Gemara challenges V'ramini shel hektish la'olam aser. So how can Tanna Kama say that the third time the hektish is prohibited, and Rameir says the fourth time? When we have a brisa that says that if it was hektish wine, then it's always prohibited. V'shal meiser la'olam mutar. And if it's meiser sheni, how can our Tanna Kama say that when it comes to the meiser sheni, that it's permitted by the second time? Rameir say it's permitted by the third time, or here we say that it's always permitted. So kasha hektish hektish. So the second brisa is saying hektish is always prohibited, contradicts the earlier source. And kasha meiser, the second brisa is saying meiser is always permitted, contradicts the earlier source. Says the Gemara, hektish hektish lo kasha. The hektish on hektish is not difficult. Why? Kamaktusha sagov, kamaktusha stamim. Because it depends whether or not it is a consecration to be used as a libation, that's Kedushas Haguf. The wine itself was to be used on the altar, and or if it was a consecration with Kedushas Damim, if let's say it was wine that couldn't be used on the altar, so then you consecrated it for it's just its monetary value. So if the most commentaries, the way the commentaries explain this is, if it was kedusha saguf, that if you consecrate it for the to be used as libation, then you can never use it by pouring your water in. And if it's kedusha damim, that's when we say by the third time or the fourth time would be permitted. The Rashba and the Ritva say maybe they would have thought that it's the opposite logic, but they say since nobody else says that, we don't want to say it. Meiser nami lo kasha. So also Meiser, when which we said is always the second price says always permitted, and the first source which says it's permitted after the second time. That's also not a difficulty. Kam b'Meiser vadai, kam b'Meiser demai. When we say that it is always permitted, that's b'Meiser demai, meaning to say you take the fruits away. You bought the fruits from the Amma Aretz. And so therefore, since really they probably did take the Meiser off of it, so the rabbis were lenient in this case, because since most Amayarites do take the Meiser, therefore we said you could be lenient and it's always permitted but to drink the water with the skins. But if you know for sure that they hadn't taken the Meiser Sheni from it, if you know for sure it's Meiser Sheni, then we're going to say that you can't drink from it outside of Jerusalem. So therefore, the Gemara says, "Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishamer B'Shul Mitzadik, K'derach she'amru le'inyan isurin, kach amru le'inyan hechsherin." So what is this? This is a reference to a liquid making something hochshor kabel tuma. So the Rashbam explains just why we say by the truma that first and second time is wine and the third time is water, and for Meiser Rishon the first and second time is water, etc. So too with respect to hechsher. What's Aksher? So we're going to say that if it's Rashbam explains, if it's the first and second time of the truma mixture, it's going to be considered wine with respect of being something hochshor l'kabel tuma, and the first time of meiser is considered wine to make something hochshor l'kabel tuma. This is in order for a food item to be able to be kabel tuma, it has to get liquid on it. But the Rashbam is going to be mechadesh. Based on this Gemara, he says we see that there's a difference between wine and water, and the Gemara will explain. And again, Rashbam says all this is a rabbinic stringency. The B'diyaraisa, biblically speaking, everything is considered water, like we say, like we said here. So the Gemara is going to ask now. The Gemara is going to ask, as Rashbam explains also. The Gemara is going to ask, why do we care? Why do we care if it's wine or water? There are 7 liquids that once they go on the item, they make the food capable of becoming tamei. So one of them is wine and one of them is water. So the Gemara says that question. So the Gemara says, why do we care if it's water? Water can make something capable of becoming tamei, because it says. And if it was wine, it could make something capable of becoming tamei. So why do we care if it's wine or water? So the Gemara says, no, the reason why we need it is shetadamu shetamadzdu megashamim. Is we're talking about a case where the skins were mixed in not with water that you poured into it, but with rainwater, as Rashbam explains. Lo nafkon mina ela shetid. That it was mixed in with rainwater, that there we need machshava. So Rashbam comes up with the chiddush here that if it was rainwater, you have to want it to go onto the skins, but in order to be used in that matter. But if it will be considered wine, then it's machshir without any machshava, without any thought. Because by water it says but by wine it doesn't need to have this chashivus. So this is a chiddush of the Rashbam, but the Tosfos rejects this chiddush. Tosfos comes up with a different answer. But anyway, we see from here, he says the answer is that let's say you use rainwater. Is that going to be considered like wine, in which case it doesn't need the chashivus, or rainwater, in which case you would need to have wanted it to go onto the skins in order for it to be capable of becoming tamei. So Gemara says, "V'kimin kashaka v'ramilahu." Well, since you're going to take some out of it and you drink it, then the next part you want it to be there. So we don't understand the question. Gemara says, no, we're talking about a case that the rain fell onto it all by itself. And so therefore, if it would be truma, the first and second time would be considered wine. But by the third time, where it's considered water with respect to truma, so then also we would say it's rainwater, and it wouldn't be hoshtra kabel tuma anymore, whatever it came on to. So the Gemara says, but still, what's the nafkamina? The kima the kanagid kama achshavinu. So the Gemara says, still, since you're pulling it out, kama achshavinu, meaning to say you realize that you want the rainwater to go down on it, and maybe it'll get some of the water, because since you're pulling some of it out, so therefore it shouldn't matter. It should be it shouldn't matter how the rainwater got in there. Once you pull it out, it shows you want it. So I'm Papa, but Parasha showed to Rishon. No, we're talking about a cow that was drinking from it, and so therefore, but all of a sudden, by the time it comes to the third mixture of the skins with the water, there's no, then it's already out, and since it was water at that point and not wine, therefore you would need to have machshava. So that's what we're talking about, where the cow drink it. Okay. Amarav Zutra Bar Tuvia, Amarav Ein Omrim Kiddush Hayom, Ela Yayin Aroi Unasach Agabe Amizbeach. You're only allowed to say Kiddush on Shabbos or Yantif on wine that was capable of being used as a libation on the altar, that was appropriate to use as a libation on the altar. When it comes to the Kiddush, you can't just use anything. You're not supposed to use anything. You're supposed to use something that was fit to be used on the altar, and so therefore, for this reason, you can't use wine that was not fit to be used on the altar. It's not appropriate. So the Gemara says, well, what is this excluding? If you want to say, well, maybe it takes out the wine, maybe it's excluding a case where you just took the wine straight from the press, i.e. what we call grape juice. It hasn't fermented yet. But we know that wine from the press you shouldn't bring on the altar. Maybe kosher, it would be kosher. And so since we're going to say that the wine for Kiddush is one step down from the altar, so we would use it even initially for the we'd allow it to be used for Kiddush. As Rashbam says, the Kiddush is not as strict as the libation. So the Gemara says, no, what we're talking about here is the Amara. Oh, and that proof that you can use Kiddush wine, that you use grape juice if you did it on the libation, it's okay. He says you're allowed to squeeze out the grapes, turn it into juice, and then use it as Kiddush. But the commentaries point out, this doesn't mean to do this on Yantif and or Shabbos. No, it means you do it during the week, and then you use it as grape juice. Yeah, you're not allowed to squeeze out to make grape juice on Shabbos. The Omer love, and we say, so it's it says, no, so it's coming to exclude a case where if you find the wine on the top of the barrel or the bottom of the barrel, and this wine is not kosher for Kiddush because you're not allowed to use it for the libation. So that's what we're excluding. Gemara says, kosher. You are allowed to use that for the if it's kosher but the Eved. So therefore, the Gemara says, so no, we're coming to exclude the black wine or boreg or white wine or Healy stone, or if it's too sweet, or shalmartef, or the wine in the cellar that's beginning to sour. That's what we're saying you can't use for Kiddush, or shaltzemukim, or for raisins. The Gemara says, "V'atanya b'kulon lo yav," even maybe kosher, but do we have a price that says if you use any of these wines as rainwater, as Kiddush, it's okay. El miyitu yayin koses. Mazog Magua Vishal Shmarim Vishero Choras. No, it's coming to exclude Yain Koses is the wine that's beginning to turn. It tastes it has it smells a little bit like the vinegar, and mazog gets mixed with water or diluted, or megua, or wine that was left uncovered overnight, or shel shemarim, or the wine that was made just from skins and water, or wine that smelled bad. The Tanya v'kulan lo yavi. You can't bring any of these wines as a libation. V'mevi pasul, and if he brought it, it's disqualified. What's it coming to exclude? If it's coming to exclude the wine that smelled like vinegar already, even though it tastes like wine. What are you adding? This is already a dispute between Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shua ben Levi. That remember we said on yesterday's daf that Rabbi Yochanan it's actual wine, and so therefore you can use it to take off the truma on a different wine, and so for sure be kosher for nechasim, the nesachim, and the kiddush. And Rabbi Shua ben Levi he said it's shakal, and so therefore you can't use it. So therefore, why did he put the law on the libations? And if it's to say that you can't use diluted wine on the mizbeach, the why? We have already said that the diluting of the wine with water is what makes it good wine. The Amar Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Chanina, Modim Chacham Rabbi Lazar b'Koshel Bracha Shem Mevarchin Ad Sheiten L'Tochel Mayim. You have to put the water in a kosher bracha. You're supposed to mix it with water, and so it's a libation. You can't use the water because the libation has to be something that's very powerful. But the wine for kiddush, you're supposed to mix it with water because that makes it taste better. And ilu miyute megua, if you want to exclude the wine that's uncovered. Zakani, of course you can't do that. It's dangerous. Why does he have to tell us that you can't make kiddush on it? It's dangerous. Of course you can't make kiddush. And ilum yute shel shemarim, if it's to exclude the wine that was made on top of the water on top of the skins, if it is, you poured in 3 cups of water and 4 cups came out, then it's obviously wine. And if you poured in 3, and it out came 3.5. This is already a dispute we had on yesterday's daf. Does it have a law of wine or water? And the Gemara there rules like the Rabbanan that you make a shahako on such a cup. And so for sure you can't make kiddush on it. And so therefore, what is the case he's referring to? It's to exclude the wine that smells bad. That basically the wine got the bad odor from the utensil was in. And so therefore, even though the bracha is agafen, Rav Zutra is teaching us that just like this is not appropriate for libation because it says, as we'll quote in a moment, the pasuk from Malachi chapter 1 verse 8, that you're not allowed to bring something for God that you wouldn't bring as an offering to an officer. So too, you can't use it for kiddush. We buy the same alternative answer. And it's to exclude a case of wine that was left uncovered overnight. Even though the avrei misanenes, and even though you filtered it out, like Rabbi Nechemia, who says that if you filter it out, the poison, then you could drink it. That's still not appropriate. Still not appropriate to use it for kiddush since it was once poisonous. By mine Rab Kahana Chamua the Ramashar Shemirava Chamar Chivarian Mao. What about white water? White wine. Is that going to be something that you can use on as for kiddush? Amarei Al Teira Yayin Yis Adam. So Rava responds. It says in the verse in Mishlei, don't Al Teira Yayin Ki Yis Adam. Don't put your eyes to drink red wine because it makes somebody too drunk. And so therefore, with respect to libations, it's preferable to the red wine over the white wine. So he says it's preferable to the red wine over the white wine. So the Rimigash explains that the proof of Rava comes from the verse that red wine is better for Nesachim. And so according to the Rimigash and also the Rashbam, if he brought white wine for Nesachim, he would be okay b'di Eved. And so too, the white wine for Kiddush is okay. But even though the red is the ideal. So but Rabbeinu Gershom brings a different proof that from the fact that the pasuk praises the red wine, it proves that red wine is good, is best for the nisachim and the kiddush, and the white wine is not good. And he says even b'di'evid, and that's what the Ramban says. So, with respect to white wine, what so there's a whole question. Most usually we say that it's. I don't think anybody. Some people say you have to use red wine, but most say white wine is okay. Okay, so drink rosé. So Gemara says kankan and bisharon, and drink rosé in between. Kankan and bisharon. The Mishnah says the if you sell to somebody the jugs from the Sharon, and then there were some broken jugs, then if he accepts upon himself 10 broken ones for every 100. But says the Brisa Tana, what does it mean broken ones? Pisatos naos mugufaros. It doesn't mean that they're really broken. It means that they were nice looking jugs, and then they got a crack in them, and you fix them up. So you could still use them, but they're not going to last as long because they're aftermarket. They've been repaired. Okay, that's today's daf. We continue now with tomorrow's. So